Dozens of citizens were killed on Friday morning as a result of the Israeli occupation forces shelling of a residential area in Beit Lahiya city. In Belarus, President Alexander Lukashenko met with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in the framework of the meeting of the Supreme State Council of the Union State in Minsk. And the 65th MERCOSUR summit is being held in Uruguay, where regional leaders have reached a trade agreement with the European Union. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. And we begin with the Middle East. Dozens of citizens were killed on Friday morning as a result of the Israeli occupation forces shelling of a residential area in Beit Lahiya city near the Kamal Adwan hospital in northern Gaza. A large number of people are still missing under the rubble of houses in Beit Lahiya as WHO slams the attack that was uninformed. Tel Aviv also bombed a school for displaced people in the town of Jabalia, and 2 citizens were killed as a result of the shelling by the occupation forces on Al-Rafi school, where displaced people was sheltered in that city, and 3 citizens were killed as a result of an airstrike in Kirbet al-Adas, north of Rafah city. Likewise, there are dead and wounded bodies on the streets, and no one can reach them as ambulances and medical teams cannot approach the site. And in this context, Israel's campaign against the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees in the Near East is extending its reach with the use of hate speech and threats to its staff. This was warned in a statement by the main humanitarian actor in Gaza, recognizing the impact of these pressures against its operations and workers. The entity denounced the use of billboards in several cities around the world and paid advertisement on the Google platform on multiple websites seeking to discredit what is considered to be the backbone of the UN in Gaza. To date, 251 UNRWA employees have been killed in the coastal enclave, and 2/3 of its buildings have been bombed. And the Jerusalem District Court on Thursday rejected Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's request to limit his mandatory court appearances in his corruption trial to twice a week. The judges ruled that they found no compelling reason to grant this request, forcing him to testify 3 times a week. The first hearing will be held in December 12th. Netanyahu is charged with fraud, breach of trust, and accepting bribes in 3 separate scandals involving favoritism with powerful media outlets and wealthy associates. Netanyahu denies any wrongdoing. And amid this escalation in Syria, the Iraqi Popular Defense Forces have reaffirmed their support for the government of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad.
Hoy, el Comando de Operaciones de Ámbar, el Comando de la Séptima División y sus brigadas, representadas por la
Today, the Anbar Operations Command, the 7th Division Command and its brigades, represented by the 102nd Brigade, the 25th Division and all other sectors, including the Rapid Response and Border Guard commands, are conducting a sector inspection mission and locating the soft areas through which terrorists try to infiltrate the Syrian side.
The Iraqi borders are secured with all technical preparations, including barbed wire, barriers, trenches, berms, concrete blocks, thermal cameras and a fully equipped border police. Following the recent events in Syria, the Prime Minister and the Popular Mobilization Commission issued a directive to carry out joint operations to secure the borders. Today we are carrying out this joint operation to secure and protect the borders of Iraq and to support the border police. These support operations will continue to protect the land and skies of Iraq.
And now we have a short break coming up, but first you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Belarus, President Alexander Lukashenko met with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin on Friday in the framework of the meeting of the Supreme State Council of the Union State, which is currently underway in the capital of Minsk. The gathering focused on strengthening the common defense of the Union State of Russia and Belarus. In addition, Putin and Lukashenko discussed the implementation of the provisions of the Treaty on the Establishment of the Union State for 2024-2026 and the concept of security in various economic sectors of common interest. In this regard, Putin stressed the importance of the meeting at the socio-economic and humanitarian level. And furthermore, the Russian head of state warned about the interference of Western countries in European affairs, which contributes to the escalation of tensions in the region, especially pertaining to the Ukrainian conflict.
Today, we will sign an interstate agreement on security guarantees within the Union State. It defines mutual and allied obligations to ensure defense, protection of sovereignty, independence and constitutional order of Russia and Belarus, integrity and non-interference of territories and external borders of the Union.
And in addition, the Russian president announced the signing of an interstate agreement aimed at guaranteeing security, sovereignty, independence and constitutional order in both nations without foreign interference.
Today, we will sign an interstate agreement on security guarantees within the Union State. It defines mutual and allied obligations to ensure defense, protection of sovereignty, independence and constitutional order of Russia and Belarus, integrity and non-interference of territories and external borders of the Union State, and the use of all available forces and resources. We are also talking about Russian tactical nuclear weapons, as proposed by the President of Belarus on the territory of the Belarusian Republic.
And in other news, the leader of South Korea's ruling party, Han Dong-hoon, called on Friday for President Yoon Suk-yeol to be immediately suspended from his duties. This follows news that the president ordered the arrest of senior political leaders, including Han himself, during the martial law he surprisingly declared on Tuesday. Han said he has confirmed with credible evidence that Yoon gave orders to arrest him, the leader of his own party, or Lee Jae-myung, the leader of the main opposition Democratic Party, and said that these radical actions put the country in great danger and could be repeated if the president remains in power.
Last night, it was confirmed through reliable evidence that President Yoon Suk-yeol instructed Yo In-hyun, his high school junior and defense counterintelligence commander, to arrest key political figures and others on the grounds that they were anti-state forces on the day he declared martial law, and that the president mobilized an intelligence agency to arrest politicians.
And also in this context, the chief of the People's Power Party called for an emergency meeting of all its lawmakers to discuss the vote to be taken in the parliamentary session to approve or not Yoon's impeachment.
Considering the newly emerging facts, I believe that a swift suspension of President Yoon Suk-yeol's duties is necessary to safeguard the Republic of Korea and its people.
We go now to Vietnam as the country achieved a trade surplus of $24.31 billion between January and last November, when exports and import operations totaled $715.55 billion of the currency. In the past 11 months, the value of exports reached $369.93 billion, up 14.4% year-on-year, while imports totaled $345.62 billion, up 16.4 percentage points over the same period last year. According to the General Statistics Office, 36 products reached an export volume of more than $1 billion in reference period, and 7 of them brought in more than $10 billion. And in Ghana, the two main political parties running for the presidency held their final rallies in Accra on Thursday in an election largely dominated by the country's economic crisis. Former President John Dramani Mahama of the National Democratic Congress is the main opposition candidate facing Mahamudu Bawumia of the ruling New Patriotic Party. Bawumia has served as vice president for the past 8 years under President Nana Akufo-Addo, who was elected in 2016 amid widespread dissatisfaction with the then ruling party and after months of intense power shortage and high-profile corruption scandals. Dramani is now running for president again, and presidential and parliamentary elections will be held simultaneously on December 7th. And in Sierra Leone, a national preventive vaccination campaign against Ebola launched on Thursday, administering a first dose to frontline and health workers. This national preventive vaccination campaign against the disease is carried out a decade after being the country's hardest hit by Ebola and in history, which left more than 11,300 dead in West Africa. As reported by the WHO, the UNICEF and the Gavi Vaccine Alliance, the campaign seeks to administer a dose to 20,000 people. The target population includes healthcare workers and frontline workers exposed to the disease. Now we have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you will be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. MERCOSUR and the European Union have reached an agreement on the disputed free trade deal at the 65th MERCOSUR summit that is underway in the Uruguayan capital of Montevideo. In this regard, the European Commission announced on Friday that talks on the free trade agreement have been finalized after more than 2 decades of negotiations. The deal now faces a battle for approval in Europe given French and Italian opposition. The prospect of the agreement was also met with resistance by farmers from different European countries who will be negatively affected by it. For her part, while announcing the decision, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen expressed the deal was a win-win for both Europe and the MERCOSUR member states.
Agreement. Europe is already MERCOSUR's second largest investment and trade partner. So you know how we do business together. We're focused on fairness and mutual respect. EU-MERCOSUR will bring meaningful benefits to consumers and businesses on both sides.
And speaking at the inauguration of the new Suzano pulp mill in Mato Grosso, Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva predicted economic growth of 4% for the current year, defying pessimistic forecasts. The assertion is based on official data released this week, showing that gross domestic product grew by 0.9% in the third quarter of the year compared to the previous quarter, and by 3.1 percentage points compared to the same period last year. Lula criticized the predictions of some market sectors, which expected a GDP growth of only 1.5%, and assured that the Brazilian economy will grow by 3.5% and could even reach 4%. He also highlighted Brazil's remarkable economic growth compared to the global economy. And in other news, the Constitutional Court of Ecuador declared this Thursday that Japanese Furukawa company kept workers in slavery conditions and ordered the payment of $120,000 to each victim of the practice known as slavery by serfdom. The Constitutional Court informed that Furukawa violated the prohibition of slavery to the detriment of the avacaleros of its plantations, denying their human dignity. It added that the company took advantage of people in conditions of extreme vulnerability to live in camps and the farms and harvest avaca, a fiber that is used in the textile industry. It also identified 342 people who were living in slave-like conditions in camps without electricity, drinking water, basic sanitation, or access to education or health services. And the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, awarded on Thursday the former president of Uruguay, José Mujica, with the Cruz de Boyacá, the highest civilian distinction awarded by the Colombian government. The ceremony took place at the home of the former Uruguayan president on the outskirts of Montevideo. The Order of Boyacá honors and exalts national and foreign individuals and institutions that have excelled for their services in Colombia. After the reading of the protocol text of the order, the Colombian president proceeded to place the sash on Mujica, who was accompanied by his wife and former Uruguayan Senator Lucia Topolansky, to later pose before the press and enter the house without making any statements. We go now to sports, as the groups for the 2025 Club World Cup, to be held next summer in the United States, have been defined after the draw was made in Miami, Florida. The 32 invited teams already know their way in the new FIFA tournament, which will be held from June 15th to June 13th in the United States, and where the Mexican League will have 3 representatives: Rayados de Monterrey, Pachuca, and León. As was already known, Inter Miami, of the host country, will be in charge of the opening of the tournament at the Hard Rock Stadium, where Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez, Sergio Busquets, and Jordi Alba will open the curtain against the Al Ahly Football Club of Egypt on June 15th. And the 45th edition of the Havana Film Festival opened on Thursday, December 5th at the Charles Chaplin Movie Theater in the Cuban capital, with the presence of at least 42 countries, including Mexico, Venezuela, Argentina, and Spain, among others. The director of the festival, Tania Delgado, said that the festival is a bet on the diverse identity of Cubans, and said that during the event, a day will be dedicated to highlighting the cause of the Palestinian people, victims of the genocide ongoing in the Middle East. As part of this inauguration, Cuban artists performed, among them Cuban pianist Alejandro Falcón and saxophonist Cesar Lopez. A tribute was also paid to Cuban cartoonist, screenwriter, and film director Juan Padrón. And on December 6th of 1998, Hugo Chavez Frias was elected for the first time president of Venezuela with the 56.20% of the votes. He put an end to bipartisanship exercised by the Acción Democrática and COPEI parties, which surrendered the country to neoliberal interests. On February 2nd, 1999, Hugo Chavez assumed the presidency of the country with an oath that marked the beginning of a profound process of change. During his swearing-in, he expressed the will to promote the necessary democratic transformations for the new republic to have a Magna Carta adequate to the new times. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.